Welcome. Tonight is the Town Candidates Debate for the upcoming April 26th town election. I'm the moderator of this debate, Bill Carroll. The first debate will be for the office of Town Clerk. I'm going to read these rules to you so that I make sure that I get them correct this evening. Before the debate, lots were drawn to determine the order of the candidates. The candidates for the debate this evening are Betsy Sheeran and Kristen K. Henshaw. The press panel this evening is the reporter Mark Sardella from the Wakefield Daily Item and Richard Tenerio, editor of the Wakefield Observer. There are no opening statements in this evening's debate. In turn, a question will be asked of a candidate by the press panel. That candidate will have 3 minutes to respond to the question. Following that response, each remaining candidate will have the opportunity to present his or her own 2-minute response to the question. To allow for as many questions as possible in the time available while maintaining the ability for all to have a chance to respond, the candidates should please keep their answers short and to the point. As each round of the questions is completed, I will choose at random a question from among those submitted by Wakefield residents and present the questionnaires name and the question to the next candidate in turn. Questions have not been provided in advance. Questions must be relevant to the issues important to the town. Questions of a personal nature are not allowed. At the end of the debate, in turn, each candidate will present a 2-minute closing statement. The producer requires the moderator to maintain strict compliance with the stated time limits in order to be able to have as many questions as possible from the press panel. And hopefully I won't have to interrupt. The moderator will govern the conduct of the debate at all times. Don't worry. Let us now begin with the debate with a question to Christian Henshaw. Mark?
Tell us why you're running for town clerk.
I'm running for town clerk because I believe I can do the job. I can face the challenges. I've worked as a warden in Precinct 6 for 10 years. I have a sense of how elections should be maintained and run. I have office experience in my rather eclectic career history. I've worked in offices. I have worked as a bindery supervisor. I've worked as an elementary school teacher, a teacher of adults in a university program. I've been a cab driver, a waitress. I have done myriad forms and different kinds of volunteer work. I think, knowing what I know about the office of town clerk, that it is an amazing stew, if you will, of responsibilities. Not only are you in touch and in tune with state or Commonwealth regulations, you must be a liaison with them and the town. You swear in new officers. You are in charge. You are the chief election officer for all elections in the town. You are the person who performs clerical duties at all town meetings. You're responsible for maintaining all of the vital records for the town. That would be births, deaths, and marriages. There are some happy moments as a town clerk. One of them, of course, is knowing everybody in the town at one time or another, either by their appearance at your office looking for a certificate, for a dog license, to register to vote. There are so many things that a town clerk does that I would be surprised if there's something that a town clerk does not do. I like to think of the office, as Mary Kay Galvin called it, the hub, if you will, of the town. This is the place, and I would be the person as town clerk who would see everybody. And those are some of the things that I find compelling about the job. I am wonderful when it comes to detail orientation. I am almost picky to the point of being perhaps a little bit compulsive, but that compulsion will serve me well in this office. And I thank you for the question.
Follow-up?
Yes, thank you, Mark. I have spent the past 27 years serving on elected town boards. I'm very familiar with the goings-on, if you will, of the town and all of its mechanisms, so to speak. I have also spent, as well as the 27 years in elected office, 44 years volunteering in this town. I chose it to be my community in 1971, and I have volunteered in schools and civic organizations and supported them. I'm very familiar with state laws. Having spent 27 years on elected boards, I've been very much involved and keeping abreast of all of the state laws, the changes, the open meeting laws, the public record laws, and all of those things that govern bodies within this town. I've been chairman of the school committee. I was chairman twice of the Wakefield Housing Authority, on which I sat for 11 years. I've been chairman twice of the Wakefield Board of Selectmen, and I'm sitting now as the vice chairman of the Board of Selectmen. I have great organizational skills. With other partners, my sister being one of them, friends being others, have opened 3 businesses. I understand organization. I know routine. I have management skills. I have leadership skills. My peers have voted me in as chair several times on several committees. I'm very cooperative, and I'm willing to work with others. I'm very detailed-oriented, much like Kristen said she was. I have a teaching background. I have a master's in library, which is very definitive about many of its rules and regulations. And I have a degree beyond my master's in educational technology. I'm a problem solver. I do not suffer procrastinators. I believe that, as Kristen said, and it's not a belief, it's a fact, the town clerk's office is the repository for all of the town's records. And I guess my efficiency is, I'm very proud of, and I get things done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question to Betsy Sheeran.
Thank you. Betsy, you mentioned organizational skills. I was wondering if you could speak about how do you balance having to deal with multiple projects at one time?
Thank you. I find it very easy to deal with multiple projects. The first thing you do is you prioritize them. And I always work backwards, believe it or not. I don't start with number 1. I start with something that's not pressing and work my way right up to the top one. I believe there's a book called The 1 Minute Manager, where something should cross your desk once, all right, and be done with it. Once you prioritize something, you start picking them off one at a time, like ducks at a shooting gallery. For instance, Wednesday afternoon I came home and I found an email from someone in this community, whose name I won't mention, not that it's any big deal, who had a question. I emailed her back immediately and said, I'll get to you tomorrow morning. First thing the next morning, because I have an excellent working relationship with the town administrator, having served, on the Board of Selectmen for 12 years with him, and now that he is town administrator, and I found out the answer to the question. He said, have her call me, typed it right back, emailed her. At 9 o'clock the next morning, I got an email from her, thank you, the problem's been solved. So you do things quickly, you do them efficiently. There are some that take more time, but you have to organize your life. You have to organize everything. You have to set a priority. My list here, right here, and I'll show it to you, it says things to do. I make a list of things to do every day. And if I add something that isn't on the list, I add it to the list and cross it off, and that makes me feel even better. I like to get things done. And I can't stand clutter, and I can't stand things being on a back burner, unless you're waiting for, an answer from, say, the state or something like that. I have 2 friends that work at the Secretary of State's office. I can usually get through if I have a question about anything. So I just like to organize things and get them done. I don't know how else to say it to you, Rich, and be done with it. And people should go away happy, and they should go away satisfied, because they're the constituents that I would be working with.
Thank you.
Follow-up?
Thanks.
I think that's remarkable and wonderful.
Well, thank you very much.
I wish I could say the same for myself. I tend to organize things in piles. I am probably the messiest person in the world. But I know where everything is, and I have prioritized according to levels, the same way perhaps an archaeologist looking through what's on my kitchen table would be able to ascertain what was a priority with me. That would be on the top of the pile, under a cat usually. So basically, I would reiterate whatever she has said, except that I do not have the marvelous connections that you do. You prioritize, and you deal with those things that must be dealt with first. Now, since the town clerk's office has usually 1,000 questions coming in at any given time, you make sure that you deal with those questions that are coming in from the outside. When your citizens call you and they've got a question about when is the next election, What do I need to present at the polls? Do I need an ID if I have registered with the Registry of Motor Vehicles? For instance, questions like this, they come at you very, very fast. You deal with those immediately. But the things that can be set aside, you set them aside and you deal with them as you can. So I think you and I are pretty much on the same page. We would both be running this office very well together.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
All right, now, in WCAT's attempt to always be cutting edge, not unlike CNN and the major networks, we have gone with citizens' questions. I'm going to read the first question here. And this question is to Kristen first. How does one avoid nepotism and the appearance of conflict of interest in town government? And that's from Browen Della Volpe, 8 Cyrus Street. Kristen?
I'm not sure that you can avoid the appearance of nepotism, but it would be a good thing to avoid nepotism. That would be my short answer, and I don't know how else I could explain that nepotism is not always a good thing, and it generally is a bad thing, and it's to be avoided, as is cronyism. And I think that when you look at the list of town employees and you see the same last name more than once, I suppose the individual reading that in the item would suggest, perhaps to themselves, that maybe they're related. This often happens in towns, in small towns. It certainly happens in cities. It's not untoward and it's not unacceptable, except when it is unacceptable and it creates a problem. Thank you.
Yes. First of all, we have civil service in this town. So there is seniority and there are the unions. So that's the first thing. I think the only major issue, the police chief at a town meeting a few years ago was taken out of civil service. Everyone else is on civil service. And they are in unions, so there's union seniority. Not everyone is civil service. I made a mistake. I apologize. Police and fire are civil service. Unions in the that have unions in the other workforce, in the rest of the workforce, goes by seniority. There's union seniority there. It's very difficult. This is not the old days when you could pick up the phone and say, hey, put my kid on blah, blah, blah. It doesn't happen anymore. There's a lot of oversight, and you just can't do it. I personally support unions. I support the seniority system, and it avoids cronyism, and usually, most of the time, people are qualified for the positions that they get. I guess that's the way I have to put it. I wasn't ready for that one, cronyism. I didn't get into that one at all.
Mark, next question.
4.
Betsy.
Last year, the legislature passed the so-called Election Modernization Act, which includes such provisions as early voting. What implications, if any, do you see these changes having on the town clerk's office?
Okay, thanks, Mark. All of the innovations have got to be put out there to the public. That's the first thing. I know Kristen said that you get maybe 1,000 calls about when do I vote, do I need this, do I need that for voting. We have to put things out there on several areas using every medium we can think of to let people know what's going on. There's going to be a lot of confusion. A web page updated weekly if we have to. Notices in the newspapers, the print media. A Facebook page. Let people know. This is a whole new world out there. It's a technological world. And we have got to let the people know what's expected of them, when it's expected of them, what they have to do. For instance, the last date to register to vote, the last date that you can change your party affiliation. The fact that, and there are people back in the day that if they were neither Democrat nor Republican, they were considered independent. Well, there's a party that's called the Independent Party. So you're unenrolled. You're not necessarily independent. And some people don't know that they have to switch if they come in and ask for an independent ballot. They're going to get a ballot with people's names on it that maybe they don't know. So I think that we have to educate, and I'm not talking down when I say educate. We have to put everything out there in every way known to mankind to let people know early voting, when, where, how, and why you have to do it. And I think voting is a privilege, not just a right. And I think we have to encourage it and get everybody out there as the best way we can. We need to have forums. There's a Wakefield 101 that's going to go on. We had 800 new families move to Wakefield in 2015. These people have got to know, maybe they do, what is going on in the town, when things have to change, and the dates, and all of the logistics that go with being able to go down and exercise your right to vote. And I think that's what it is. The more information we can put out there, the better it is. May cut down. You're still going to answer questions, but you're not going to get as many as you did before. Where do I vote? How do I vote? That's another whole story I could get into. But that's how I feel. I think that information has to be put out there not only early but often and followed up with.
Kristen, follow-up?
Would you repeat the question?
Sure. Last year, the Massachusetts legislature passed the so-called Election Modernization Act, which included such new provisions as early voting. What implications, if any, do you see these changes having on the town clerk's office?
Early voting would mean what?
People can, it's not unlike absentee voting. You can come in, I don't know what the time period is. I think it's like up to 3 weeks early.
Okay.
And you can cast your vote ahead of the election day.
I see. Okay.
It's to make it more easier for people to vote.
I would applaud that change. I think that voters who are expected to show up at the polls at 7 o'clock in the morning before they go to work, before they get on the roads and go off to work, or at the end of their day with a child under each arm up until 8 o'clock at night, I think that early voting would be wonderful. And as much as I certainly appreciate Ms. Sheeran's input, I would suggest to you that if we just put a headline on the back page of the Wakefield Daily Item or the Observer tomorrow, that people would be early voting before too long, because it would be a huge convenience to our voters. I think that there are so many things that we can do to encourage voting, and that would be one of them. Absolutely. I would be very much in favor of it. And I would suggest that I don't think that we have to go to the extent that Ms. Sheeran suggests that we do. I think it would catch on immediately. I know that people who vote absentee, some of them have run into problems with their ballot being somehow misplaced, or they have not signed something and so it wasn't counted. There have been all sorts of problems. If people can vote early, and not often, but early, I would suggest that it would be a wonderful idea. I think most people, as I do, would applaud it. Thank you.
Rich, next question to Kristen.
Thank you. Kristen, I was wondering if you could speak about how you would envision the first few months of your term should you be elected.
Excellent question. Thank you, Chris. The first thing I think I would do would be to set up a program much as Mr. Blanchard in the Social Studies Department had at the high school some years ago. At the time, I was a member of the League of Women Voters, and voter registration was huge. I would like to go to the high school, and I would like to start registering our young voters, our youngest voters. And as I often point out to young people, I was a registrar under Thelma Renard for a time. And when I found people in my neighborhood, young people who were not registered to vote and showed no interest in doing so, I pointed out to them that they would be the people who would live the longest with the consequences of any vote. And they did not want to leave voting up to the old people who probably say, I've got a few years left, what do I care? Anything can happen. So I would like to get to the high school and start a voter registration drive there so that any young person at the high school who will be 18 at the time that the election is actually held would be eligible to vote. I would go for them first. I would go to the festival by the lake, and I would register people there. I would delegate registrars to work in venues where I couldn't be to make sure that we beefed up all of our registered voters. And then I would do whatever I could to encourage them to vote. Early voting might be a wonderful boon in any community, but in this community it would be wonderful. We have a lot of working people here. They are hardworking. And when I worked in my precinct and I would see them come in at the end of the day having gone through who knows what in the course of their workday, with a child, with a dog, with somebody in a wheelchair, and I would say to myself, this isn't fair. These people should be able to vote absentee, but given the current rules of the Commonwealth, you cannot vote absentee unless you can show, or unless you're going to be out of town or in the hospital or otherwise indisposed. That's not right. I think voting, we want people to vote as much as we absolutely can. And I think it's a wonderful question, and I thank you for it.
You're welcome.
My follow-up? With all due respect, I agree with you that it should be done up at the Wakefield Memorial High School, but that is being done in the Social Studies Department.
Is it?
Yes, it is,
Good.
indeed. So, and I agree with that 100%. What would I do in the first couple of months? Was that
Yes.
the original question?
Yes.
I would update the website. I would set up a Facebook, not I personally, there is staff in there as well, set up a Facebook page. I would ask and sit with some of the town departments and see what they need. I would follow up to make sure that the town clerk's office is the repository, which it should be, of all minutes of all municipal boards, elected and appointed. Those should be there like that, ready for people if they're interested in getting the minutes. I would also, it's not a penny candy store, I would also see what we could do about getting a charge machine in there so that when people came in and wanted to pay for a dog license or a marriage certificate or a birth certificate or copies of documents, that they're able to swipe a charge card or a debit card. That's the 21st century. We need something like that. We can't be giving change for, in quarters and half dollars and so forth and so on. And I think I would try to do some innovative things in that office. I would like to get every single thing on disk so that if you called me and wanted the minutes of a particular board that had met, you would get it immediately electronically by email. If you want a copy of it, you'd have to come in and get it naturally, and you'd be charged the 5 cents a page for it. But I think to eliminate and to help people and to make just every bit of information out there available. And I also will go so far as to say, and I know they're dreaded by some people, but I don't see anything wrong with a robocall if there's some important election coming up, and letting people know. And it can be short. Don't forget, vote tomorrow, because we've had 4 elections. We're going to have 4 elections this year. The presidential preference, which was March 1st, the town election April 26th, the presidential primary in September, and then the presidential election in November. So people are going to be, thinking, my heavens, didn't I vote before? Am I voting again? What's going on? Blah, 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 blah. And I think we have to make them very cognizant of what the election is about. Well, that's what I do.
Thank you. All right, due to time constraints, we're going to take one more question here, and you each get 1 minute, okay? I'm adaptable on the fly. This is also from Bronwyn Delavolpe. What is the most important skill you would bring to the role of town clerk? Betsy, you go first. 1 minute. I'm going to hold you to it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Thank you.
I think the best thing that I could bring is my experience working with people within the town. Okay, that's the first thing. I would bring this is not in the order of importance, by the way. My organizational skills. I'm a bear for detail. I get along with people. I'm a problem solver. I don't suffer procrastination, as I said, easily at all. I want to get a job done. I want this to be just the best place where people that come in, they are satisfied and they leave. And that's what it's all about. We work for the people in this community. I even feel that way about elected officials. On different boards, you're there because you want to do the best for the community. And I know I only have a few seconds left, so I'll just say I bring my organizational skills. Maybe that's the best thing I can bring there.
Kristen, 1 minute.
I like people. I like people a lot, and I'm a fast learner. Unless you've been a town clerk, you have no idea how the job gets done. You can know 1 million town clerks and listen to them forever, and you'll never know how the job gets done. But if you can learn, and if you're patient, and if you like people, it's an ideal place to be because you can never stop learning. There's always something new. There's always a new question, a new face at the window. It's a wonderful, wonderful place to work, and it is the hub of the town. I agree with Mary Kay Galvin. Absolutely. you get to know everybody, and there are sad times when they're looking for a death certificate, but basically it's a birth certificate, or they're going to get married. What could be better than that? What a happy place.
Okay. All right. Now, each have 2 minutes for your closing statements. Kristen went first, had the first question, so she'll go first again with her closing statement. 2 minutes. Ready?
Almost.
Okay. Here we go.
My husband Richard and I moved here 38 years ago. We aren't townies, but our 2 children are. They were born in our home. Our daughter and her family now live across the street. 3 generations of us now call Wakefield home. We know how special this town is. In 1983, Pauline DeGusto, Liz Freeman, Patty Bogus, and I formed the Wakefield Recycling Committee. In 7 years, we held 84 consecutive monthly paper drives. We broke all national records collections, thanks to Wakefield's outstanding participation. This town is special, and I want to be its next town clerk. Although I wish that former town clerk Mary Kay Galvin was still in the office she occupied for 12 years. Town Administrator Mayo and others wanted to make her job an appointed, not an elected position, but Mary Kay would not step down, and she was unbeatable in any election. A campaign of harassment ensued, so damaging her health that her doctors advised her not to return to work. The stress could kill her. She retired. I spoke up for Mary Kay. Subsequently, I was informed that the selectmen had decided not to reappoint me as warden for Precinct 6, a position I had held for 10 years. I was not to work in any precinct in any capacity. This was a bitter learning experience. On the first day that nomination papers could be taken out for the town clerk's job, my opponent, a sitting selectman, filed her intent to run for the office. I hoped someone else would take out papers. If she ran unopposed, it would become a de facto appointment. I cared too much about Wakefield to let that happen. I tossed my hat into the ring. Wakefield deserves a choice. I'm not a politician, I'm a candidate.
10 seconds.
There's a difference. JFK said mothers may want their sons to grow up to be president, but they don't want them to become politicians in the process. Please vote. You have a choice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bessie.
you very much. I'd like to thank David Watts, WCAT, Tommy Stapleton and his volunteers, members of the press, and those who sent questions in. Mr. Carroll, thank you, and thank you, Kristen, for being here. Before I launch into my 2-minute thing, I would like to clarify 2 things very specifically, because I think this is very important. First of all, no one, and again, with all due respect, no one changes that position of town clerk from appointed to elected, or from elected to appointed, except a change in the town charter. The selectmen have absolutely nothing to do with that. Absolutely. And that's a fact. All right? That's in the town charter. There are 3 elected positions because of the town charter. Secondly, any reappointment that came before the Board of Selectmen to be a poll worker was a recommendation, not of the Board of Selectmen, a recommendation from the head warden, the temporary town clerk, and the town administrator. Those are the names that were brought to the Board of Selectmen. And I must tell you, I'm sure you are well aware that I did not vote on that particular issue because to me it would have been a conflict. And since I decided to run for town clerk, I have not made one vote that would put me in jeopardy as far as a conflict of interest regarding, I didn't even vote for the new voting machines, okay? And I could have, but I didn't. I'm not even getting into my biography here. I'm just going to say that I have every right. I would not have run for this position unless it had been an open seat. And back 12 years ago, I was the Precinct 2 captain for Mary Kay Galvin when she ran. I still have the brochure at home. So I would just like to say that I want to straighten those things out because I never thought we'd get into personalities, but
Yeah.
I'm not going to do my biography here.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks a lot.
All right, thanks a lot. I'd like to thank WCAT, the candidates, the press who are here tonight, and stick around. We'll get a little half-hour break, and we'll be back with the selectmen for the same debate format. Thank you very much. Good evening.